Recently, fellow content creator Sergeant Graybeard posted a build packed with explosive resistance. This triggered a core memory from a video I'd seen 2 years ago by esteemed creator Mutant Cowboy, who tested protection from elites and, you guessed it, explosive resistance. Since many things have changed in the last 2 years, I decided to give the testing a go. Join me on this journey to find out the secrets of explosive resistance. Hey agents, it's Dispatch. Welcome to the channel, where we talk about the math, builds, lore, and game design of Tom Clancy's The Division 2. Let's get stuck into it. If it sounds like I'm always calling out other content creators in my videos, that's because I listen to and watch a lot of YouTube. With The Division 2, the saying, "there's nothing new under the sun," is particularly apt. It's very hard to come up with unique builds and concepts in this game because the player base is so passionate. This means I really try to credit others who produce quality content and where I'm drawing from. As I see it, a rising tide lifts all boats. Even when critiquing, I clearly have no problem calling out others by name. I don't see any reason not to. In this case, we're piggybacking off of two content creators' work. As I mentioned, Mutant Cowboy and Sergeant Graybeard. Mutant Cowboy stepped away from content creation, but when he was active in the space, he was very detailed and did a lot of very informative testing in his content. He also posted a lot of unique builds, many of which still hold up, but need an update. Brother, if you see this video, you've got to get back into it. These builds deserve a refresh. Sergeant Graybeard is a really positive, wholesome creator that I really respect and enjoy. I don't think he's really tuned into the math, but, whatever. Today we're going to critique the foundation of his build, explosive resistance, and see if it really works as he's intending it. This, again, is not against him personally. I don't want you to think less of him or anything because of this. We're all helping each other get better through feedback and honest, transparent information. So in this video, we're going to step through what explosive resistance is, how it has changed, how I tested it, the test results, and then come to some conclusions. Explosive resistance is an additive stat that reduces the damage of explosions to you. By additive, I mean that each one adds together. So if you have 10% on your minor attributes and 20% from Legmo, that would be 30% explosive resistance. If you get hit by an enemy explosion, its damage is reduced by 30%, aka is multiplied by 0.7. So an explosion that would do 1 million damage would only do 700,000 damage instead. For the longest time, the maximum explosive resistance you could get was something like 70 to 80% if I remember correctly, because brand bonuses only gave you 10%. With the recent changes to the game, Langmo now does 20% and Richter and Kaiser does 25%. Minor attributes still do 10%. Here's a funny thing that I never realized because I honestly never built for this stat. You cannot reach 100% explosive resistance. If we look at our stat sheet here, there's a hard cap at 90%. By hard cap, I mean it functions like critical hit chance. Critical hit chance can't go past 60%. So with explosive resistance, even though I should have something like 93.5% explosive resistance, I'm stuck at 90%. This shows in your stat sheet, and you wouldn't realize this unless you looked at this area. This brings up something else kind of funny. Langmo and minor attributes are in increments of 10%. Richter and Kaiser's 25% makes no sense because that 5% is wasted if you hit the cap. There's no 5% anywhere else to put in your build to make use of it. So this buff needs to be buffed to 30% if we're being honest. Now, into the testing. I'm focusing on testing explosive resistance only to remove scope creep and make things easier for myself. Let's be honest. These tests were annoying as hell to get going, so I really didn't want to test anything else. Mutant Cowboy tested protection from elites as well, so check his video above to see all of that testing. It seems to still hold up. If you want me to explore Glass Cannon, Aegis, the Defender drone, etc., let me know and I can tackle these in a future video. So I put on as much explosive resistance as I could to get to 100%. As we can see, and as I mentioned earlier, it hard caps at 90%. I'm not running Sawyer's Knees and I'm not running Demolitionist, so I'm not getting any of those anti-explosive benefits. I ran around the open world looking for Black Tusk and Outcasts to test on. As you can see, against BTSU Grenadiers and explosive drones, it really does seem to work well. However, in this made testing take a lot longer, reds and purples hardly send out any explosives at all. Elites definitely spam them a lot more. Make sure in combat you prioritize those enemies. We can see that we're still getting staggered from explosions even at 90% explosive resistance. However, we see that sometimes the explosive damage comes through anyway and the explosive resistance doesn't really work. In addition, when running a shield, taking direct hits to the shield will do way more damage than it should. We're talking a shield that's got about 13 million health and it's going down to under about, I can estimate maybe 1 million. That's 12 million damage from a single hit. Meanwhile, when we take a hit to our armor, it's doing maybe 100,000 damage or so. Clearly, the explosive resistance doesn't apply to our shield. Mutant Cowboy's hypothesis with this disparity was that the shield was taking on the PvP 5 times damage taken modifier. This math seems to match up, and it might be related to the problems the devs were having with the explosive traps in PvP. Regardless, tanking explosives with your shield is a huge liability that is going to severely reduce its effectiveness until the devs fix this. I found some other oddities here though. Sometimes a grenade will hit what seems to be the upper part of our shield and it will apply that damage to our armor instead of the shield. Maybe it's some weird hitbox shenanigans that are happening here. In most instances, it isn't really hard to avoid explosions, especially when walking around free with a shield and leaving some distance between you and your enemies. Being in cover and or being much closer to the enemy will make it harder to avoid. And of course, on Legendary there's much more explosive spam, and it comes from multiple directions, and it's very hard to see with all the bullets hitting your shield too. You're probably going to get murked by an explosion unless you've got a lot of practice. Now on to testing with self-damage. As we can see, just using a frag grenade on ourselves, it works as expected. It also nukes our shield way more than it should. Now on to testing with Outcasts. Outcasts have red, purple, and elite rushers who explode. Many people know this, and they are very annoying. This is where things get really interesting. Mutant Cowboy also pointed out some weird things with this in his video, so check it out for more detail. Red and purple Outcast rushers behave exactly in line with what we've just seen. Our explosive resistance works for us, but not for our shield. With elite rushers, however, we are pretty much guaranteed to be one-shot by this explosion. Our explosive resistance does nothing. This is possibly coded as status effect damage instead of explosive damage. We are always taken down to a sliver of armor and basically no health, after which the fire status effect finishes us off. Let me know in the comments if you want me to test a Hasbro and explosive resist build to counter these rushers and see if that works. I didn't do that in this video because I don't want to go through putting the video together, and I honestly don't think it'll work. Let's take a little tangent to talk about Hasbro and how it seems to work. We haven't seen the code, so I don't think this is 100% certain, but Hasbro doesn't seem to reduce the damage that you take per tick from the status effect. Instead, it reduces the duration of the status effect on you. In case you didn't know, you need different levels of hazard protection to be completely immune to each status. These are all somewhere between 90 and 100% if I remember correctly, but each one is slightly different. This seems very strange, but becomes clear when you take the duration into account. Each status effect has a different duration. These percentages of hazard protection are what is required for each duration to go below 1 second. If you go under 1 second, the status effect isn't able to do its first tick, so it doesn't take any effect and doesn't do any damage. At least that's the explanation I've been told. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Given that the quote-unquote explosion from a rusher seems to happen instantly and doesn't have a duration, I don't think that Hasbro will actually have an effect. A build specifically for this would be purely academic, and for curiosity's sake, it would require sacrificing so much on your build as to be pretty much worthless. But again, if you want me to do this, I will absolutely do so. Let me know. Or you could just shoot the rushers before they get to you. You don't even have to worry about it. So just, whatever. Anyway. So we've seen that explosive resistance doesn't work very well. It's inconsistent, doesn't apply to the vast majority of enemies in the game, can't go to 100%, and doesn't apply to our shield. This makes it, in my opinion, wholly unviable. I really hope the devs fix the issues with this, and for the love of Isaac, just combine it with hazard protection and let it go to 100%. I don't see why they are separate, and I don't see how combining them would upset the balance of the game. A while ago, I posted a video about how the game needed to evolve to remain a good experience. One of the suggestions was modifiers. I wasn't talking about the current modifiers though, I was talking more about things like double enemy spawns, different enemy compositions, etc. It would be really interesting to have a modifier of explosive ordnance stockpile, designating that there are a lot more explosive enemies in the area where you could run an explosive resistance build and actually feel powerful. But alas, it isn't to be, at least not yet. So why don't we have an active denial system turret that could take out explosives and grenades? That would be a cool, interesting skill. Why isn't the defender drone block explosives? Well, maybe in Division 3. So what's our final conclusion? Don't run explosive resistance. Sure, running one piece of Langmo in a legendary where you're getting down by explosions a lot, maybe it could work for you. But don't run a full explosive resist build, especially as a tank and using a shield. Be sure to check out the videos from Sergeant Greybeard and Mutant Cowboy in the description to show them some love. And of course, show me some love too by liking the video and subscribing. All feedback is welcome, so put your comments, questions, disagreements, whatever in the comments below. And lastly, as always, that's all I've got for you today. So until next time, this has been Dispatch. Take care out there.